Thanks, Marianne. Thanks, everyone. It's good to be back again this year. I came last year, and the conversation was such a nice mix of perspectives between the WASH community, NTD community, and others that I think we were able to really move the dial a little bit on in terms of understanding the contributions each of our sectors can make to resolving some of these issues. So in the few minutes today, I wanted to just highlight a few case studies that I've come across through my work at PwC. Around the ways the private sector is intervening in WASH. We've already heard from a few already throughout the day, and I think that hopefully as we continue after this to the panel that we'll touch on a number of others. So the first is when you get individual businesses. What can single businesses do? And a lot of our discussion today has been focused on agricultural economies or far out of or urban slums in less developed countries. But the problem of resource constraints isn't only in less developed countries. Problem of resource constraints, if by resource constraints we mean finance for WASH infrastructure and interventions, happens all around the world. Even in the US, there's cases where nowadays with climate change, increasing needs for climate adaptation, increasing needs for stormwater runoff and management. So what happens is when you get big storms, the sewers overflow. Big storms and sewers overflow equals contamination, equals negative health impacts. And so the US regional authorities, like those around the world, are trying to say how can the private sector be involved in developing this. Now, one thing the private sector really understands is money, finance, things, the way that businesses talk to each other. And so this project is basically to look at how you can, by not just building another wastewater treatment plant or a larger sewage or a larger overflow storage facility, if you rather build some marshlands or other types of natural ecosystem, natural infrastructure, that those can enable you can both prevent the contamination of the groundwater, but you can also create fisheries, you can create tourism sites, and so there's a number of other social and environmental benefits that come in addition to the initial water ones. So part of what we're trying to bring in this case is just an understanding of if all those externalities, environmental and social, were monetized, what would the value of that benefit be to pave the way for more solutions like this? WSUP, water and sanitation for the urban poor. I saw already that on Carolyn's slide. I know there are some other supporters of WSUP here earlier in the morning, and also indeed last year, I think. So WSUP, water and sanitation for the urban poor, they basically work with water service providers, water and sanitation service providers in developing economies. So go into Nairobi, for example, and these service providers don't really know the fancy Western financing techniques, fancy Western contracting structures, ways to deal with micro buyers, small scale, base of the pyramid business models. So WSUP provides advisory services to them, but also provides focused solutions to help them understand how they can contract with financing partners, how they can contract with community, water user associations, and others. So WSUP, I think, is an interesting and replicable model. Another one that we'll show if I push the right button is Sanergy. So Sanergy, basically, their tagline there, making hygienic sanitation accessible and affordable in slums. So they basically manufacture toilets. They then sell these toilets to individual entrepreneurs in the cities, and they provide the service whereby the waste is collected each day, biorefined, and sold on. So again, in the last panel, we were talking about capturing the value from the waste streams. Sanergy is a replicable way that we're both providing the infrastructure to enable the urban sanitation solutions, but then also providing income both to the entrepreneurs who are maintaining the infrastructure and running the infrastructure, and then to the business that's building the toilets. So again, a useful and interesting model. I think what these ones, all three of these last ones have in common is trying, as I said, to bring those externalities into quantified terms. And so really across each of those projects and each of those examples, they're trying to say, okay, we know that we're providing social benefit. We know that there's environmental benefit as well through the solutions that we're putting in place, but we're unable to evaluate the impacts of those. So I don't want you to be looking at that because you can't even read it, but what you can see is there's something big in red sticking out of the top, and they're not there on the bottom. So what that is, the big red bar basically says this was a case of a wastewater treatment plant on the coast. And this wastewater treatment plant was having lots of effluent that was further damaging the ecological situation. And so they said, okay, what can we do? Well, we can either build another bigger wastewater treatment plant, or we can build a mussel farm. Because the wastewater treatment plant can remove the effluent, or the mussels, they can sort of eat that, and it then has the same net effect. And so by putting the externalities in a comparable basis, and using the common denominator of money, then you're able to see that, okay, if you explain the treatment plant, that red bar is gone, but then actually there's some other red bars that are big. So those are things like greenhouse gases. Of course, if you make a big factory, you have to use energy to produce that. But if you make a mussel farm, you probably don't use as much energy to make it. So it enables you to, as a business person, to better make the trade-offs between different options or different decisions. And that's kind of where I'm going to now. So we start looking at the ways that individual businesses are engaging and interacting in WASH. And then we start trying to say, okay, well, businesses like to go together. Businesses like to work in collaboration and cooperation with each other. How can they be most effective at this? The CEO Water Mandate is one group that's doing a lot of good work in this area. They have a collective engagement work stream wherein there's many business signatories. CEO Water Mandate, for those who might not know, is part of the UN Global Compact. So there's businesses around the world sign up and say that they will pledge to basically be responsible water stewards. So they have a number of different programs. One of the programs is trying to take corporate action on sanitation. I don't know if you'll be able to read it, but basically what you're trying to get to here is we're trying to say what's the risk to the business. The businesses just need to understand cost-benefit analysis. They use simple tools to decide when they're going to move in different directions. So they need to be able to understand more clearly how does this lack of access to adequate sanitation hit their business. In what ways is that going to hit their profit margins on the cost side, on the employee sickness side, on the productivity side? Once you can have those relationships clear, then the businesses have a much clearer business case to take action. The next one, Carolyn had also mentioned, that's the World Business Council for Sustainable Development's WASH Pledge. So the way that it says the pledge up there, it says that by signing the pledge, companies pledge to basically say that all their employees will have access within 3 years to safe water and sanitation facilities. Now you might think that for some of the businesses it's easy, but I'll use the example of Deloitte. You might think, oh, they're just like you. They're a professional services company. I'm pretty sure all their offices have toilets. Well, even they, as they are digging through this, are finding some challenges in terms of the implementation. And so I think that this pledge has really been an effective mechanism by which a number of businesses can say, wait a minute, collectively, we employ a lot of people. And if we can start to measure and monitor the access that they have to water and sanitation facilities in the office, then that's a good start. Now, there's also toolkits that come with this pledge that say, okay, well, once they have it in the office, what about at home? And once it's your employees that have access in the office and at home, what about your supply chain partners? And that's where we start to get into some of the community engagement that's been raised earlier. So then I'm going to jump up to a national level and look at what are some ways that businesses are working together with governments and civil society organizations. The one that I've come across most frequently is the 2030 Water Resources Group. So 2030 Water Resources Group was established back in 2008 under the World Economic Forum, but it was basically a partnership with Swiss development banks, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola. So a number of private sector businesses, intergovernmental organizations, and then people like the WWF, so other civil society actors. And their basic premise is in any country, you're not going to be able to solve water issues, and they include WASH a little bit, but their focus is water, without bringing all the users to the table. So that means your industrial water users, your municipal water users, your agricultural water users, your WASH communities. You need to bring them all together to develop sort of a more effective management platform for the national water resources. So what they're doing now is they're going around the world. I think they're in India, Mexico, Tanzania, Peru, Kenya, Jordan, Bangladesh, Mongolia. The list kind of keeps going on. They're going country by country, setting up boards or mechanisms whereby the private sector can engage more formally in supporting the effective and equitable governance of the country's water resources. So we've seen ways that businesses are partnering to engage their employees, like the WASH supply chain. We saw ways that businesses are partnering with governments, but our focus today, this is urban. This is the urbanization, sanitation, and WASH. And so that leads to the last business collaboration that I've mentioned, which is that Marianne had alluded to, and that's that PwC and a number of other businesses have now said, wait a minute, it seems as if those national governments, like the last example, are actually less effective in a number of areas these days compared to the city governments. So the balance of power, maybe, or the balance of at least activity is moving from the national level to the city level. So these businesses are trying to say, how can we, business, have a productive role to play in these cities? And it's across all issues, housing, transport, talent, etc. But one of those most important issues is your health infrastructure, or your water and sanitation infrastructure. And so hopefully well, at least the ambition for this is as the alliance and the activities grow, that we'd be able to come to a program whereby large businesses are able at the kind of mayoral level to engage with the cities to unlock some of their multi-stakeholder projects there. So I think that's kind of where I leave you today in terms of the examples that I wanted to come with. I'm really looking forward to kind of getting back in the panel after this to discuss with some of the other presenters the ways in which they've used or that they see these single business or multi-business collaboration models evolving, and indeed taking your questions. So thank you.